Peace everyone, Unmask Art here, and welcome to the first ever art club review. What I'm going to be doing today, as I'm joined here by the lovely little Udon, I'm going to be going through the projects that we've completed this year. I'm just going to be generally talking about them, some of the things that we covered, some of the things that we learned, some of the things that I learned, and uh, we got a lot of projects to go through. I'm not going to go through any of the monthly masteries. If you don't know what the monthly masteries are, it's just it's a monthly project that I schedule out each month for you to hone your skills and practice and just get better. I'm going to be going over the main art club projects. I think there's 22 of them or something. I think I have 17 here, so I might be missing a couple of them, or the numbering is off. I can't quite tell. But anyways, let's get right into it. Udon's going to be crawling on me for a while. Look how adorable he is. I just woke him up, so he might be a little grumpy. Okie dokie. So, hey there, Diane, Wim, Stephanie, Rain. Good to see all of you. I hope everyone is having a lovely week. So here's the first project. What do you think, Udon? You like the chess pieces? In this project here, we used the 12 pack of polychromos. Now, if anybody's unfamiliar of the art club, let me just quickly give you a little definition of what the art club is. So I live stream on Monday and Tuesday, and we do colored pencil and pastel projects. All of the projects that you're going to see me going through today were completed as art club projects, which means if you go over to my website, you will see all of the projects listed. You can find the line art and the reference photo for each project, and then the video lessons where I go through step by step from beginning to end on how to complete the project. There's, of course, tons of other various conversations that we have, subjects that we talk about, tips and tricks and hints and guidance and art in general. Of course, I also have the Discord channel where you can talk to me pretty much 24/7 and ask me questions and guide you through whatever art projects you might be working on. But anyways, that's what the art club is, and I would love for you to join it. We're going to be doing a ton of new projects as the year gets kicked off. This will be the last live stream for this year. And so next year, we're going to be starting all kinds of fun projects. So I look forward to it. Anyways, so this project here, we use the 12 pack of polychromos. If you recall, this was on the gray tan paper. And this was a fun little subject. I took this reference photo of a couple of my chess pieces. We learned a lot about color mixing and controlling saturation. Because we just used the 12 pack of polychromos, we had a limited palette. And so in order to get like the oranges and that sort of ivory color of the white piece, it required quite a bit of mixing and precision. But overall, it was a really fun, challenging subject with the reflections and the highlights and everything like that. And this was one of my favorites of the year for sure. It's simple, but it looks really good on the tan paper. Hey there, Melanie and Sherry. Good to see you. Udon says hello too. Say hello, Udon. He's quiet. He doesn't talk a lot. He's being rather calm, all things considered. Usually when I first wake him up, he's just trying to get away from me. All right, so let's have a look at the next project. This one here, this is a Colorado picture. This is actually a composite that I created from a few pictures that my brother sent me. So this was actually not necessarily a commissioned piece, but something that I did as a gift to my brother. He travels out to Colorado every year for like I don't even know, a couple weeks or something like that. And he like camps in the middle of the woods. And this is like the trail that they take to where they go hunting or whatnot. And so I took a few of his pictures that he sent me and sort of composited into this. This was a pastel project that we did spend quite a bit of time working on. This project did take a while, as it was a larger pastel project. And we started with the sky and the mountains. And in this project, one of the things that I talked a lot about was using shapes and the right color. When it came to working out like the process of doing the mountains, because I felt like the mountains were a really important feature, as it takes up about a third of the total project. So the mountains required some unique colors. There's some very saturated blues that showed up, and those kind of colors can be rather intimidating to use. So when we were working on this, I talked about just focusing on the largest shapes and sort of just let yourself use these really bold colors in spite of them being somewhat intimidating. And then we, of course, seen that same feature. Hey there, B. Good to see you. Oh, and Lisa, good to see you as well. That we saw that same feature with the grass and the snow. So the way that we approached the sort of the snow cover that occurs in this scene is we ignored those shapes of the snow. We sort of left them blank for a long time, and we just instead focused on the grass. And we just applied some general grassy colors, some of the browns and the oranges and the greens and the blacks to fill in the grassy area around the snow. And then, of course, we came back over with some white and a hint of blue to make the snow sort of look three-dimensional and just give it a little bit of texture. And we finished this project up with the silhouette of my brother riding the horse, and just sort of worked around that for the longest time. The other difficult part of this project was the tree, the tree line on the right side, because the way that I approached it was I sort of left that area kind of blank, and then we filled it in with some blue and some gray and some brown, and then we used the white and the black Carbothello pencil to add those trees over top of it to just sort of create this illusion of dense bald trees. And so that's sort of how we approached that part of the project. By the way, if anybody has any questions about these projects while I'm sort of just recapping and explaining some of the things that we did and some of the things that we learned and talked about on these projects, feel free to chime in, ask me any questions that you want. Like I said, this is the last live stream of the year. So we're just here to kind of hang out and look at some of the projects that we did. And if you have any questions at all, don't be shy. I will not be streaming next week, just to be clear. The next stream. Actually, let me see if I can. The next stream, yeah. So let's see. It won't be December. How do I don't even know how to change this. Okay, that works. So the next live stream will be January 2nd. So that's when the next live stream will be. So January 2nd will be the next live stream. So you have plenty of time to catch up on any of the projects you may have missed. Udon, are you sleeping upside down? Look at this guy. He's just wrapped around here. You don't even know. You don't even know what you're doing. He's such a goofball. He makes me laugh all the time. Hey there, Linda. It's good to see you. This is what he does. He'll just like wrap up and then he won't move. He'll just go to sleep. He's moving real slow. All right. So moving on to the next project. I think the next two projects are sort of connected in the context of what we were doing with them. So the next two projects are the hand and the foot project, where we explored skin color, dealing with skin, texture. And then we also did these projects, if you recall, we also did these projects with just the 12 pack of polychromos. The previous project, by the way, was done with the set of Carbothello pencils. But this project here, this was done with the 12 pack of polychromos on the Clairefontaine neutral toned paper. Don't fall, Ludon. And like I said, we explored doing skin tones, and I know that skin tones are, for a lot of people, skin tones are something that people just struggle with. And one of the things that I showed through the next two projects that I'm going to share with you is that skin really just has all the colors, and there's no like magical color for skin. Like there's not like a magical set of three or four or even five colors that you can just use repeatedly to get the best skin tone. And if you recall, when we started this project, one of the first colors that I introduced was actually green, which clearly is not a color generally associated with skin tone. And when we were doing this project, I talked about why I chose to start with green, because I wanted to sort of prove a few things. Udon, please don't crawl on the microphone. I wanted to prove a few things. I wanted to prove that all the colors, first off, are in skin. So I started with green just to emphasize that. And we used the orange, we used the purple, we used all the browns, the yellows. We literally used every color in the 12 pack of polychromos. And this is the result of the hand project. And then following up on this project, we did the foot project, this one, and this was the same thing. We utilized all of the colors, sort of maximized what we could with those 12 colors in the set. And you can see how the green adds sort of that translucent effect of the skin, and it shows like the veins going through the foot, not in like a grotesque way or anything like that, but you can see how all of the colors come together to make the foot look more alive. Oh goodness. Udon is trying to squeeze my ear. He's fallen. Are you having fun? I think Udon's having way too much fun right now. But anyways, that's what those two projects were. And then while we were doing these projects with colored pencils, we were doing this project here, and you may recognize this adorable little creature. Udon, look at the screen. See that? We of course did a portrait of Udon. And this was a really fun, challenging project as well, because there's clearly a lot of texture in this project, and then of course I utilized a shallow depth of field to just make it feel more three-dimensional. We had a nice array of colors here. See how yellow you looked? You were so young, Udon. That's baby Udon in this portrait. He's growing up so fast. He's a year and a half old now. You're so old. And generally, when the pythons are small, their colors are a bit more vibrant. He's a bit milky right now because he's going into shed. I can show you a little bit. So you can see Udon's a bit milkier now. He's going to be going into shed in like a week. His eyes are already sort of starting to glaze over. And so his color gets real dull, doesn't it? Doesn't it, buddy? And yeah, so you can see, I also, admittedly, I boosted the yellows a little bit in the artwork because I just think it looks it looks cooler, but it's still it's still this adorable little boy here in that picture. But like I said, doing the shallow depth of field was a challenge. That's always a challenge for people. Doing things that goes from like not necessarily maximum blurriness, but a degree of blurry, and then gradually building up the textures to make things look like they slowly come in focus. And I was really satisfied with the way that this came out, and with everybody that followed along on this project, they did a really good job of it. Udon enjoyed everybody's project. So after we finished this one, we changed gears and we did something a little bit simpler. We did this rather simple still life of a mandarin orange. This was just a fun, quick little project, revisiting some, just some basics. We used a little bit of pan pastel here, if I recall, in the background. I think somebody may have to correct me. Maybe I'm mistaken. Actually, I think we did. I think I used the pastel pencils in the background, or maybe I used soft pastels. Somebody will have to remind me, but I can't quite remember if I used the pencils, the soft pastels, or the pan pastels. Actually, it's been a while since I've looked at this project, but this is a good one for practicing different textures. One of the key things that I talked about a lot this year was texture and how to create texture. And of course, everyone should know by now that you only need three shapes to create any texture that you need. So that's dots, dashes, and lines. And you can use those three shapes in any combination to create any texture that you ever come across. So obviously the background here doesn't have any texture, as it's not meant to be, or it's not meant to have any texture. If you look at the table or the wood that the orange is sitting on, all the texture there is just lines. The two things on the left are just old rusty nails. Yeah, just old rusty nails hammered into some piece of wood. I didn't take this reference photo. This is a reference photo, royalty-free reference photo that I came across, and I just kind of liked the simplicity of it and the diversity of color. I thought about removing the nails from the picture, but I kind of liked the nails because they reincorporate some of the orange from the orange. So I like to reuse those colors. It just sort of harmonizes things a bit. So again, the wood just uses lines to create the wood grain texture. And then, of course, the orange peel has dots. And dots are really all that you have to draw to get that orange texture. It's just dots in various colors, a little bit of dark brown, some of the red, some of the orange, some of the yellow, and then of course the white for the highlights. And I really like the way the texture came out on this orange. Definitely one of my favorite projects that I've done in orange. I've drawn many oranges, and this is probably one of my favorite oranges. The next project, we again focus on some skin. One of the more difficult skin-related projects. Again, we are using just the 12 pack of polychromos, and this is actually one of my favorite subjects, as you've perhaps remembered or recalled me mentioning before. I love doing the back. The anatomy of the back is so complex that I find it a challenge anytime I ever do it, and it's always enjoyable because you can see a little bit of the rib cage as the guy is leaning. You can see all of his muscles, his delts into his lateral muscles and his shoulder blades, pinch points, all the way up through the neck, a bit of the triceps, some of the biceps. Arguably, I think that I could maybe have done better on some of the anatomy. I'm not quite sure about his right arm. I sort of feel like, I don't know, I sort of feel like I didn't do it as well as I would like to be able to do it. But this is one of the subjects that I still have trouble with after all these years. And then on top of that, we did, like I mentioned, use just the 12 pack of polychromos, which just adds that extra level of complexity and difficulty because to get the skin colors, you have to do a lot of mixing. You can still see a bit of the green in there. And then since we did spend, we spent I'd say 3 or 4 months combined working on skin this year because we did one portrait, we did this project, we did the hand and the foot, and so one of the things that I mentioned throughout all of the skin related projects was the importance in the use of gray. Gray is probably one of the most important and unrealized colors of skin because a majority of the skin is sort of just a grayish tone. It's a very muted, not high saturated color, and we don't think of gray as being sort of a dominant color of skin. We tend to think of oranges and browns and reds in skin, but really I'd say close to 50% of skin color is just gray. Regardless of the complexion, you could be very pale to very dark. And I'd say roughly 50% of the skin color is actually gray to some degree. The next pastel project we did was the tiger eye. This was another fun project. One of the things that I'm going to do next year is we're going to do a couple pet portraits. I think it's definitely time to do a dog portrait, perhaps a cat portrait, some furry creature. We could do a rabbit. Whatever you guys want to do, just let me know. But for sure, we're going to do some furry creatures next year. This was sort of a shortcut way to just get into fur and not necessarily do a full scale animal portrait. Perhaps we'll do a full scale tiger portrait. That could be kind of fun because dealing with the fur pattern is also can be tricky for some people. But anyways, for this project, we utilized frequency separation. That was one thing that I talked about in this project, sort of filling in the large general shapes of the fur and not so much worried about the full texture of the fur. And then we added the texture on top of those larger shapes and utilized a lot of different colors. I talked about creating really good eyes by utilizing the general rule of filling in the color for eyes is, of course, to always move away from the center of the pupil to get that subtle, realistic texture. And then the other thing that I showed you in this project was creating salt and pepper fur using the zigzag mountain technique. Udon's trying to escape. Don't choke me. And so that's sort of the few things that we covered in this project. The next pastel project was this lovely statue. This one I had a lot of fun with. Let me just tiny bit off the screen here. There we go. So this one was a lot of fun. This was a rather difficult project because we are focused on subtle different textures throughout the project. So we have a slightly rougher texture for the hair. We have a super, super smooth texture for all of the skin part of the statue, or the what's supposed to be skin. Obviously it's all marble. You have like the wrinkled texture of the cloth. You have the more jagged, rougher texture of the ground beneath her feet. And so we were dealing with all of these very subtly different textures with a really minimum color palette. I think we used five, maybe six colors for this project in total. I remember using a little bit of blue. You can see some of that blue showing up in the shadows. And then I also used like a sandy color to get that marble looking just like a shade brown, just a touch of like a brownish yellow. And then we used some like various grays and black and white and whatnot. And yeah, this was a challenging project. If you recall, we used masking film to separate the object from the background. I did end up using the pan pastels for sure for this project. And what I did, if you remember, we used a little bit of cobalt blue and I think raw umber or maybe sienna. I think it's raw umber also in the background. You can't really see it all that well in the digital version of this picture, but the left side of the background has some blue and the right side has a little bit of umber. And those were the colors that I also incorporated into the statue itself, just sort of harmonizing the statue with the background. I believe I talked a little bit about that, just sort of reusing those color tones. Even if it's subtly, it can make a really big difference. It can really elevate your artwork overall. But yeah, that was a really fun project. I enjoyed that one a lot. The next pastel project was, of course, My Neighbor Totoro project. This one was also super fun. We used masking film in this one as well. I also did quite a bit of it, like the background with the pan pastels. And then I also utilized the technique of using an ink pen. So the black outlines that you see in the scene, you can simply do that with a regular black ink pen, and it works really well. One of the things that I wish that I had done slightly different with this project is used a thicker black ink pen. So when you use black ink on the pastel mat, the way that it covers the pastel mat, it doesn't allow the pastel to stick to it in those areas. So you can think of black ink as almost masking off the area because it doesn't the pastel doesn't really like to stick to it that well. And it makes it very easy to go back and add more ink later. And it also makes it a little bit easier to color within the lines because it doesn't really want to lay on top of it. Is it easy to use masking film? Yes, I think that is very, very easy to use masking film. I have just like a roll of masking film. You can buy the masking film. I use Frisket, the brand Frisket. You can buy it in a roll or you can buy it in like individual sheets. I buy it in a roll. It's a bit more expensive, but you get a lot more. And I don't use a lot of it. I don't use a ton of it. So a roll, I think I just finished actually this year. I finished the roll that I had, and I think I had that roll for like 3 years. So I had it for a very long time. And so I definitely got my money's worth. Um, Maybe I think I've done a tutorial in the past on how I use masking film for the pastel projects, but one of the things that I always recommend. So if you go to the part in your local department store and you get scissors like this. So these scissors are, I think they're called cuticle scissors. I'm not 100% certain about that. A lot of people use them to cut like hangnails and stuff. My wife prefers to use these to cut her fingernails instead of fingernail clippers. Um, but they're extremely sharp. Let's just put it that way. And because the blades are so small, it is so much easier to cut out small, simple details from the masking film. So I have done a tutorial before for sure, uh, on the using masking film, but perhaps I'll do another little short one because I don't think I have like a video dedicated exactly to it or precisely to the method that I use. So I'm trying to think what we actually do not. I don't have the next pastel project that I'm going to be doing for the next year. Um, I was thinking about a portrait, but most likely I'm going to do a still life. And if I end up using masking film, what I'll do is I'll make a tutorial of the masking film process just all by itself. That way you can see exactly how I do it and you'll see just how easy it is. Because there's a few different methods that you could use. Some people like to use like an X-Acto knife, a really sharp craft knife, after the masking film is laid down, sort of cutting around it. That method does work, but you have to be quite delicate with the paper underneath, because if you press too hard, you're going to etch into it, and if you press way too hard, you're just going to cut your paper, and nobody wants that. The other fun technique, if you notice the rainfall in this project here, the other fun technique that I shared with you in this project was how to use a ruler on your pastel projects. Because obviously you can't just take a ruler and lay it onto a pastel project and expect it to not get scratched up and messed up and everything like that. But the secret to using a ruler on your pastel projects is to simply wrap your ruler in glassine paper. And so that was one of the techniques that I used to create the rain here. I used the ruler wrapped in glassine paper, and then I used the Carbothello white pencil to create those perfectly straight lines to create that rain texture. And that was actually the very last thing that we did with this project, was creating that rain texture. All right, moving on to the first and only portrait, I believe, of this year, and this was another fun project. One of the things that I changed up this year that I didn't really do previously is I utilized the pan pastels a lot more. And for the background of this project, I also just used the pan pastels. But like I always say, when I do utilize the pan pastels, you don't have to have the pan pastels. I know for a lot of people it's expensive. I mean, they are expensive, but they do last like forever and a day. So you only really have to buy them once, basically, and you'll have them for like the next 50 years of all your pastel artwork. But so the background here, just a variety of the pan pastels that I had available. This project, I used the masking film. You can see how sharp all of the edges are of the lady standing there. And that's simply just due to using the masking film. It allows you to get those super clean, sharp edges. If I'm remembering correctly, we focused on doing the bouquet of flowers first. And the bouquet of flowers is essentially going back to how to create textures. It's essentially just dots. So dots of various blues, greens, a little bit of purple and gray. And then we focused on the dress and creating that sort of translucent effect. And I talked about like why parts of the dress appear green. And it's because the dress is sort of a bluish color. It's kind of a blue, and her skin is very yellow in this particular scene. And so you have this blue and yellow mixing, and so you get sort of this gray green color, and that's what helps create that translucent effect. And then we worked on the skin, worked on her face, and I think we finished up with the hair. And the hair was, I also, one of the tutorials that I did, it wasn't an art club project, although you can follow it in the art club. but it's also available just on YouTube. I did the hair tutorial last year as well, so that's available. You can always check out that. It's on my other YouTube channel. Just for anybody that's unaware, this is just the Art Club YouTube channel. But if you just go to Unmask Art, that's the other YouTube channel. You can find the hair tutorial there. You can also watch the real-time version of the hair tutorial, so no time lapse or anything like that. You can watch literally every single pencil stroke and you can see just how easy it is to do hair. I used to find hair to be extremely difficult until I learned how to break it up into very, very simple steps. And now hair doesn't give me any trouble at all. The next project was another chess project, but this time we did it in pastel. I pretty certain that for this one, I also used the pan pastels for the background. The background here is actually just made up. This is another one of the reference photos that I took. And I also did this painting in oil paint as well as pastel. And I utilized some of the colors that I knew were going to exist in the chess pieces themselves. You sort of have that orangey yellow tone. So I used some of that orangey yellow tone also in the background just to harmonize all of the colors. And then the chess pieces we did using the Carbothello pastel pencils. I still really like the way this project came out. The next pastel painting, we're getting close to the end now, was of course this project. This is probably one of my favorite projects of the year. This one utilizes a bunch of different texture techniques, and I really talked a lot about texture here, using frequency separation and using dots, dashes, and lines to create all the unique textures, creating the unique texture of the tablecloth and the clay jug, the fruit and the bird, and even the background a little bit. But this project was an absolute blast. I really, really enjoyed this project. All the people that did this project that I was able to see did an absolutely amazing job on. So I think this was probably one of the favorite projects of the year for most art club members. A lot of people really enjoyed this one, including myself, of course. And I think my sister wants this project for her house. I almost always give my sister Lisa my still life paintings and pastel paintings because she always frames them and hangs them up in her house. Hey there, Claire. Good to see you. All right. The next project here, this was a colored pencil one that we finished up not too long ago, actually. As we're getting closer to the end of the year with the projects, I sort of started with the beginning of the year. Udon's being fussy right now. I might have to put him away. He's being fussy, trying to squirm away. But yes, this was a colored pencil project. One of the things that we did with this project that I showed you was creating that bokeh background effect using a circle stencil. And of course, we should have all learned the importance of making sure you thoroughly erase your graphite line art, because you can still see some of the graphite in the frog and also the little hair thingies on the beetle. It would look a lot better if I could have erased that, but I sort of had some colored pencil from the background covering it a bit too much, and I just didn't erase it enough. You can also still see some of the graphite on the top edge of the log a little bit. And so, you know, I'm not perfect. Nobody's perfect. So, we're always just trying to get better. We also dealt with a ton of unique textures here in the frog and especially in the beetle. I think the texture in the beetle is probably something that a lot of people would face and struggle a lot with. So I'm hoping that the way that I went about the texture, the way that I explained the process and the thought process and everything, everybody that followed along in this project, I felt like they had excellent texture in the frog and the beetle. So yeah, hopefully that worked out for everybody that followed along. One of the struggles that a few people had with this project was doing the foliage. Now I simplified the foliage a lot in my project, partially for two reasons. One, I didn't think that it was super important to get the foliage like hyper realistic in any way because it's not a dominant part of the picture. And so I just wanted to keep it kind of simple. And so I focused mainly on just the general shapes and sort of getting a little bit of that three-dimensional look by darkening the space behind it and letting the leaves sort of that bright green just show through. And I think it came out pretty good. Again, I just want to remind everybody, if you have any questions at all on these projects, don't hesitate to ask. All right. Now this one here is a picture my friend sent me of him riding. Now I'm forgetting the country, Croatia. Yeah, he was riding his bike in Croatia and got this picture taken of him by one of his friends. And he showed it to me a couple months ago. He showed it to me. I was like, oh, that's really cool. And what I liked mostly about the photo was the change in color. So in the sky, you have these really, really bright, like wonderful colors. You got the blue and the yellow, the orange, the pink, and the purple, just all these really lovely colors in the sky. And then it transitions to like this really deep blue for the lake that he's riding into. And then you have this like bright yellowish green color because he has a lamp on the front of his bike because he's obviously riding at night. And I just really, really liked the way that it looked. And then also the shapes. If you look, like the sky is just sort of like a rectangle. The water is like this upside down triangle. And then the light from his lamp is like a regular triangle. And it just sort of creates this geometric pattern that's very unique. And so I just had to paint this project. And one of the things that I'd say I learned on this project is the pastel pencils, they don't really like to work on top of the pan pastels. So the pan pastels, after a few layers, the pastel pencils, they're not going to want to work very well. And that's partially why the trees coming up into the sky, they didn't come out as well as I'd hoped because I wasn't really able to utilize the pencils to get like fine little twigs and details and stuff. But overall, I was still very, very satisfied with the way that it came out. The next project is, of course, the tea kettle. And this was a uniquely fun project in the sense that I didn't expect a whole lot from this project in terms of, I don't even know what. I really liked the way the light bounced off of the hammered texture of this tea kettle. Hold on. Where are... He's like crawling in my shirt. And so the way the light played on this object was really unique, and I liked the colors also. I can't remember who it was that they wanted me to do a copper object because they asked about like what colors I would use to create copper. And of course, the color of an object is always determined by the light that encompasses the object. So wherever the object is, whatever the lighting setup, whether it's natural light or studio lights or any other type of artificial light, what color of the light plays a big role. That's what's going to determine what the colors actually look like. Now, for this project, I didn't capture the colors identical to the reference photo, partially because I was really, really restrictive with the number of colors that I used. I think we only used about 9 or 10 colors, 11, 12, including black and white. And so I was very restrictive with the colors that we used in this project. And the reason I tend to do that with the projects in general is because, one, it simplifies the overall process for sure. Pencils work better over pans if you spray pans with fixative. Yeah, I imagine that just about anything will work better once you spray it with fixative, but I do not spray pastels with fixative because I it changes the overall texture and the tone of the color. It tends to dull out the colors and also make them darker. And I just don't like the change in texture. Yeah, you were surprised how few colors we used to create this. Yeah. The other reason that I like to do that with like the restrictive color palette is because it shows you and sort of forces you to maximize every single color, because there's so much variation with just a single color, whether it's a light layer, a medium layer, or a very heavy layer. And I think that I don't think it's the general sort of approach that people take when they're learning colored pencils they have a tendency not to maximize the colors to their full potential. And so when you're using a color and it's not getting dark enough, I think people have a tendency to incorporate a second darker color to sort of shorthand what the first color is already capable of doing if you simply layer it more. And so that's one of the reasons that I always am very restrictive with the amount of colors. And it tends to turn out really well. It turns out very well. So the final project we're going to look at is the one that we just finished up this week. Actually, we just finished this up on Monday. And I sort of feel like the color's off a little bit. Let me see here. Oops, that's not what I meant to do. Let me hue, saturation, color balance. I feel like there's a little bit too much magenta in here. There we go. Yeah, there's just a bit too much magenta. See, it's like more purple than it should be. Bad color correction on my part. Seems Udon's finally calmed it down. But yeah, this was a fun project. I actually did not use masking film in this project, which I think would have probably have made it a lot easier, truthfully. But I ended up using just my regular masking tape for the top edge of the mountains, and then we did the sky, or I did the sky using pan pastels, because it was just a really smooth, soft sky. It had that blue, it had the purple and the yellow. And then, of course, one of the things that I always mention when doing like sunset type of skies is I always mention the secret to transitioning between complementary colors. And the secret is to always transition with gray. So if you have a sky, hypothetically, say you have a sky that transitions from orange into blue, which is not uncommon when you're dealing with like a sunset or something along those lines, or a sunrise. You have to transition the orange into gray and then the gray into the blue. And that's how you prevent turning your sky brown. And then of course, if you have what's like a blue into a yellow, like a you don't want to turn your sky green, so you transition from the yellow into gray and then into blue. And so that's how you make those smooth transitions in these type of skies. I always make sure that I mention that when doing projects like this, just in case anybody is unaware of it. Although at this stage, I think most of you probably are. And then we did the mountains with we did the rest of the project with just the Carbothello pencils. And one of the unique things that I did with this particular project is I guess it's not very unique because I was just talking about it, but I also was very, very restrictive on the colors. So essentially, after I had the four colors that we used for the mountains and like the three colors that I used for the grass, that was it. I didn't add any more colors. I reused like the yellow in the trees and the foliage to make them just a bit more yellow than the grass, so that they stick out just a touch more. I utilized a bit of the purple also in the foliage because I didn't utilize the purple in the grass. So again, just trying to create a little bit of distinction with the minimum colors that I allowed myself to use. I could have simply grabbed any number of gray pencils to do the shadows on the little church there, but instead I already had black. I already had, did I have white? I think I had, no, I didn't have white. I didn't even have white. I used black and light gray, which was a color that I had. And so I mixed those back and forth to get that middle gray tone. Used a little bit of blue in the shadows, used a little bit of green in the shadows. And then of course I just used the purple for the roof, and then I matched the little steeple thing to the porch roof there, and that was it. So I just sort of minimized those colors for the sake of I'm not even really sure, just for the sake of making it more difficult than necessary. But it adds a unique change from the original reference photo, because the original reference photo had the brighter red color, and so by utilizing the purple that's dominant in the mountains, it sort of makes the church match the scene even more so. Wondering about first project for next year, the Thor project. Will I actually be using the Stonehenge vellum paper or something else? And does it matter if we use the same paper that you use? That's a good question. So the first colored pencil project, if you're unaware of, is going to be a portrait of Chris Hemsworth as his character Thor. We're going to be using the 12 pack of polychromos. So we're starting off with a super difficult project. Like, it is super, super difficult. It is not going to be an easy project. Let me tell you what. That is if, of course, you use just the 12 pack. You're more than welcome to use any pencils that you want, but I'm going to be doing the whole project with just the 12 pack. So there's going to be a tremendous amount of mixing required just to get all of the colors to the best of my ability. And the paper I'm going to be using, I will use the Stonehenge vellum paper. So I'll be doing it on the white paper, but it doesn't matter. Like, whether you use the 12 pack of polychromos or the full set of Prismacolor or whatever pencils you prefer, It's totally up to you. And then also for the paper choice, never feel that it's totally necessary to use the exact paper that I use. Because one of the things that I always try to emphasize is that paper choice is a personal preference. There's no such thing as the best paper for colored pencils. Anybody that says otherwise doesn't know what they're talking about. The best paper is always what you prefer the most. And I encourage you to try as many papers as you can get your hands on because they are all subtly different. And there's some papers that I've used that I just absolutely do not like. And then there's other papers that I kind of like. They work better, but they show their limitations in unique ways. And then there's papers that I love. And so I would encourage going into the new year, if you haven't explored a vast number of different papers, then make it a goal for next year to try as many papers as you reasonably can. If you have a if you have a physical art store in your area that has single sheets of paper, then what I would recommend you do is go to your local art store and just buy like one sheet of as many papers as you think is reasonable to try. Because you can buy like the A1 size paper and then cut it into fourths and you have four of that same paper, or cut it into eighths, however small you want to cut it. And I think that's going to be much more of a cheap way of exploring papers. That's the way that I did it originally. There are some paper brands that also sell like a single pack of multiple different versions of paper. I've done that as well. I still have papers that I'm trying out for the new year as well. So yeah, never stop exploring papers. Huh, Udon. You know nothing of paper, do you? You know nothing. Uh, but yeah, that's the final project that I'm gonna go over. I think there for sure there was like a couple projects that I think I missed, but it's hard to keep track of. We do so many projects throughout the year. It's really hard for me to remember every single one of them. But when I see it, I remember, because for me, my artwork has always been my journal, or my diary, however you want to phrase it. And so when I look at my artwork from the past, I recall the time in my life. I recall like how I was feeling, what I was thinking about, and in a lot of the cases of the projects, I recall like the things that I was talking about in the project, like the difficulties, the procedures, and how we approached it. But anyway, that is going to do it for today. I hope that you guys really enjoyed the live stream. I have to say that it's been a fantastic year, and I truly appreciate like all of the support that you guys have given me. Many of you have been supporting me for years now, and I just sometimes like when I think about it, I can't express my gratitude enough. I really can't. There's not enough letters in the alphabet. There's not enough words in the dictionary for me to even come close to really express how grateful I am for all of you. The just the continuous support, and I know that I'm not perfect. I try to give you the best projects. I try to give you the most thorough explanation as to why I do things inside the projects. I really enjoyed seeing the progression over the years of all of your guys' artwork, especially this year. I feel like this year has just been absolutely fantastic. So many fun projects that we've done, and seeing you guys all get better with every single project, utilizing any bit of information that I can provide. It's fantastic. I always say that when I'm doing the live streams and I'm talking through the projects and I'm doing the projects, I always say that I feel like I learn more than all of you get to learn. Hopefully in the new year, I will feel more that I'm teaching you guys more than I'm learning. But really, every time I'm doing a project, I just feel like I'm learning more and more every time. And I don't think that that would be possible if it wasn't for just the constant support. I mean, I know that I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't have your guys' support. I'd be doing who knows what else. So yes, so thank you all so much. And yeah, that's going to be it. Udon, do you want to say goodbye, or do you just want to crawl on my back? Come here. Say Happy New Year to everybody. I hope everybody has a fantastic holiday weekend. Stay safe, stay warm, eat some tasty food. We got all kinds of food that I'm about to be eating all weekend. So I'm super excited about that. Have a great New Year, and I will see you all in a couple weeks, about a week and a half. So, anyways, take care. Peace.